My name is Paul Valone, and I have the honor to direct a little group of rabble-rousers called Grassroots North Carolina. Maybe you've heard of them. Thank you for coming here today to tell politicians, the media, and the world that you will not tolerate attacks on your rights. Amen. Grassroots North Carolina was born of a rally much like this one, in a political climate hostile to individual freedom, much like what we face today. That year was 1994, and those of you new to the gun rights movement might not fully appreciate what nearly happened that year. Yep. How many grizzled veterans do we have here? Who was active in '94? Okay. As is so often the case, it started with a compromise. The compromise which passed the Brady Act, first with a 5-day waiting period and eventually with the National Instant Check System. That reasonable proposal, they said, would merely keep guns out of the hands of criminals, or so we were told. Next, against a backdrop of radical proposals like that from Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, anybody remember this one? Oh, yeah. The 10,000% tax on ammunition? Absolutely. Against that backdrop, gun ban advocates wasted no time introducing the ban in semi-automatic firearms and standard capacity magazines. And that, of course, is the ban which we forced to expire in 2004. Woo! But that semi-auto ban in '94, that too ended in a compromise, there's that word again, when provisions to register existing guns were scrapped and Republicans like Bob Dole greased the way for passage. Once again, it was touted as reasonable compromise. Grandfathered guns weren't affected, minor cosmetic changes ensure we could still buy at least some semi-automatic firearms. But then handgun control, which now camouflages itself as the kinder, gentler Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence, introduced its real agenda, Brady 2. How many remember Brady 2? Yeah, got a few of you here. I want you to listen to what David Coppell, who just testified last week to the Senate Judiciary Committee, had to say about Brady 2 and what handgun control really wanted. He says, any person who owns 20 or more firearms or more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition or primers, that's 2 bricks of .22 rimfire, by the way, would be required to get a federal arsenal license. You have an arsenal. To obtain that license, you would need to be fingerprinted, obtain permission from local zoning authorities, and pay a $300 tax every 3 years. Now we get to the real fun. Your home would be subjected to unannounced, warrantless inspection by the government up to 3 times per year. Brady 2 redefined firearm to include magazines and any part of the action such as pins, springs, or screws. Thus, if you have 2 guns, 6 magazines, and a box of disassembled gun parts, you might own 23 firearms and would have to obtain an arsenal license. Every handgun buyer would have been required to obtain a state handgun license, good for no more than 2 years. No one could obtain a license without passing a state-controlled safety course. The fees for the license and the safety course would have no limits. The fees could be set in far in excess of the actual cost, creating a source of revenue, of course. Nothing would prevent licensing authorities from taking months or even years to issue a license, and nothing would prevent the authorities from making the safety test so rigorous that almost no one except an expert shooter could pass. That an applicant had been shooting handguns for 50 years, or was an NRA certified safety instructor, or a proficient target shooter would not exempt him from the requirement to pay for the government safety class. Every handgun transfer, even if you wanted to give your adult child some old revolver, would be subject to these restrictions, and every handgun transferred would be registered by make, model, and serial number. Were it not for your efforts in the 1994 elections, when you helped Republicans capture both chambers of Congress, you would likely be living under Brady 2 right now. Well, whether you'd be living in compliance with the law, that's a different matter. We won't talk about that here. But based on the email I get, it seems that many people don't remember the lessons of 1994. Do you know, I get emails from gun owners saying, why does anybody need an assault rifle? I'm serious. I really do get these emails.
Because I can.
There you go. So I want you to take these lessons back to your sons and daughters, the lessons of 94. I want you to take them back to your hunting buddies, to the moderates at your office, to the reasonable people who might be prone to compromise on the gun control proposals being floated right now in Congress. I want you to tell them what compromise will bring. I want you to tell them that compromise in the gun debate denotes a process in which we lose just slightly less than we would have lost under our opposition's original proposal.
That's right.
But we still lose.
Yeah. Right.
We don't just lose one debate, we embolden those who would control us if they can.
That's right.
And we don't just lose some nasty-looking so-called assault weapons, we lose freedom. Even now, the whispers of compromise are floating in the halls of Congress, even in the halls of this legislative body. Harry Reid just the other day says new legislation is being readied. It's reasonable legislation that won't ban those ugly guns. Republicans like Charles Grassley, Tom Coburn, and even our own Howard Coble are making equivocating noises on this legislation.
Yep.
Senator Kay Hagan assures you by letter that she won't. You don't like Kay Hagan? Come on, she had a 62% voting record when she was here. She says she won't unnecessarily infringe on your Second Amendment rights. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't recall seeing the word unnecessarily in the Second Amendment. Do you? No. So this new reasonable legislation will just limit magazine capacities. It will just require background checks for all firearm transfers. It will just keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill, or so they tell us. But make no mistake, these reasonable universal background checks are designed to create the beginnings of a national gun registration system.
That's right.
And make no mistake, registration is the necessary prelude to confiscation. So tell the people who support this reasonable measure that the Clinton administration already tried to turn the National Instant Check System into a de facto gun registration system by failing to expunge the transaction records, which was a violation of the law. They lied to us last time. Do you trust them this time?
No!
No. That's not loud enough. Don't tell me, tell them. Do you trust them this time?
No! Yeah.
Woo! I like that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Nice work.
Freedom!
This is not 1994. Born of fire, scores of gun rights organizations like Grassroots North Carolina have spent nearly 2 decades preparing for just this moment.
Yeah.
And why have we done so? Because the attacks on your rights will never cease.
Yeah.
Most recently, we forged the National Coalition to Stop the Gun Ban, a coalition of 36 state and national organizations, all dedicated not to compromise, but to killing these proposals.
Yeah.
We've built alert networks, in our case of more than 60,000 people. We've built a network of gun shows from Asheville to New Bern, at which we recruit members and distribute legislative alerts. We have learned how to channel your voice to the people who need to hear it.
Yeah.
In 1994, when we held our original rally, I told people that GRNC was just a lightning rod. What we did is we collected your energy and channeled it to particular legislators and particular committees, and in some cases, particular corporations. As the late Senator Everett Dirksen once put it, when they feel the heat, they see the light.
Yeah.
And the people who need to hear your voice are not just the congressional representatives who will vote on the Obama gun ban, but also the leaders behind these windows, who might sometimes forget that gun owners are a large part of making North Carolina the only background state to repel the Obama political machine. And one of the few to win ground instead of losing it. So I want you to deliver a message that shakes the politicians behind these windows, and that message is, we will not compromise. So join me, please. When it comes to protecting our families, we will not compromise. When it comes to our Second Amendment rights, we will not compromise. And especially when it comes to our freedom, we will not compromise. Thank you.